All right.
Oh, yeah?
Hey, welcome to all recovery meeting today. I'm glad that everybody's here today. Let's see if we logged in, see how we look. Oh, let's see.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome. My name is Craig. I'm one of your capital recovery coaches here at the Greater Bristol Capital Recovery Center.
All right.
All right.
And I'm Karen, also another capital recovery coach.
All right.
Mr. Tech Guy is
Michael, I'm one of your capital recovery coach, something like that.
Counselor / IT.
Hey, welcome to all recovery meeting. Today we going to we got announcements. What we doing here today? We got Ro coming up next week. I don't know.
recovery spotlight tomorrow.
Oh, recovery spotlight tomorrow.
Let's talk
Check
about
out our where's that? Let me see if I got my paper here. Might have it.
It's right there. You just press it. Right there.
Thank you. All right, Recovery Spotlight is something that we do once a month here at Capital Recovery Center, and that entails of us spotlighting someone who has been living a maintained life of sobriety, and we pick an individual by them, their permission. They fill out a questionnaire, if you will, on the link, and all month we will spotlight that person. Tomorrow we will be having our June Spotlight Recovery person, so look on Capital Recovery Center's page or our pages as well and see the individual we will be spotlighting. If you would like to be one of the individuals who will be spotlighted for one of these coming months, follow the link when you see the spotlight individual picture and fill out everything that's required on there, and you can be one of our spotlight recovery participants with in the coming months. The reason why we do that is because some individuals who know you will be inspired by you and may not be inspired to go into recovery by one of us. But if they see you and they see how your life has changed, it's possible that they might be inspired to get into recovery and start the process of rehabilitation. What's next?
We have our recovery walk, weather permitted, tomorrow at 11.
Meeting here?
Yes, we are meeting here.
Cool.
And we're walking around the Bridgeton City Park and Zoo.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. That's going to be real awesome. What else we got, Mr. Dean?
coming up next week. We might as well shine a spotlight on next week. We got Coffee and Conversation.
Tuesday.
On Tuesday.
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Join us.
Right.
It's going to be an awesome time. With that, we're going to go over today what we talk about all the time, or we mention throughout the process of us doing these meetings on Tuesday or Thursday, multiple pathways to recovery. And with multiple pathways to recovery being something that we use as a foundation, if you will, today we're going to go through or start the process of going through the 12 steps, and we will elaborate on as many steps as possible, and then we'll go from there. We might not finish all 12 steps, but we'll get to where we can. And then next, once we're done with these, we'll find another pathway of recovery and get some information and bring it to you as well. So this came from a website called thenextsteprecovery.com. They got material on there that you can download and use for your own personal edification or for group setting or online, just like we're doing here today. All right. Next, y'all want to start? Somebody?
Where should we start? The introduction or what are the 12 steps?
What?
What are the 12 steps?
Yeah, let's go there.
I'll start.
Okay.
It says, what are the 12 steps? The 12 steps are a set of principles developed to help individuals struggling with addiction change their beliefs. Together they act as a framework for sustainable recovery. What's more, 12-step communities of all types help provide the support and accountability many recovering addicts crave. The 12 steps of recovery were designed as the foundation for individual recovery. They serve as guidelines for individuals on their journey back from addiction. Many have heard of 12 steps for drug and alcohol. However, the steps are used in everything from sex addiction to overeating. The language of the original steps is modified slightly for different programs, yet the core message remains the same. Today, the original 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous has helped countless men and women make sobriety sustainable across the globe.
So the 12-step principles developed, they changed slightly. The 12 steps, foundation of the 12 steps don't change, but the original steps is modified slightly for different programs. The basics of it, the foundation of it doesn't change, but each program modifies it slightly. So let's see how the 12 steps works. Like any solid plan, every part has its purpose. The 12 steps are intended to be followed in sequence and in their entirety. I gotta back up. The 12 steps are intended to be followed in sequence and in their entirety. That basically means don't skip steps. Each step builds upon the other. If you do what's necessary don't think that you have to rush through each step. Use as much time as possible to get the most out of the step that you are currently working on with your recovery coach, sponsor, or whomever. But don't try to skip a step just so you can get to the next one. Remember, the 12 steps are intended to be followed in sequence in their entirety. You may not like all of them. Some will be more challenging than others, but they are all critical in your long-term success. Each step represents a unique challenge. Tackle them at your own pace, like I just said, with the support of a sponsor, like I also said. Group therapy and 12-step support groups can also help whether you need accountability, fellowship, or simply a listening ear. Just remember there are 12 steps for a reason. 12 steps for a reason. And I copied this wrong, now I gotta flip it over.
That's all right.
You go ahead, Mr. Ding.
I caught on, I seen that. However, we're going to begin with step number 1.
Let's do it. Step number 1
is honesty.
Yep.
And it says we must admit we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. First of all, we have to be honest, not with someone else, but we got to be honest with ourselves. And so that's the first step, right? I'm going to read some more. Step 1 can be understood as a stage of acceptance. The most valuable phase of this first step are powerless, unmanageable. This step is structured around the belief that one is powerless over one's chronic disease. AA co-founder Bob Wilson likely based this concept heavily on the work of Dr. William Silkworm. Silkworm was among the first to approach alcoholism as a disease. Addiction is not viewed here as a behavior controlled by willpower. Step 1 aims to relabel the addiction of any affected individual as a disease simply to a lethal allergy, admitting that addiction cannot be cured by pure behavioral will is the first hurdle. This lack of control must be understood before a member can proceed with recovery. Constant triggering of the addiction disease has caused life to be unmanageable. Like any incurable recurring disease, addiction steals total control of one's well-being.
Wow.
Still total control of one's well-being. And it's not, and like the article says, you have to get over the first hurdle, knowing that it's a behavior.
Yeah.
It is a disease, and it's not something that it's not by behavior, but it's a disease that causes behavior.
Changes. But and you got to. It also says this lack of control must be understood before a member can proceed with recovery. You have to understand, in order for you to get help with any problem, alcoholism, substance use disorder, or whatever, you have to first realize that and understand that in order for you to proceed, you have to realize that this lack of control of the power to just stop when you want, or because at one point in time you might start out and have that possible willpower or control to not do it. But the more you spend time with that thing that you call your substance use disorder, the more or harder it becomes for you to just turn it on and off. So once you realize that, you have to admit that you are powerless over your addiction and that your life have become unmanageable, because that's the process it takes. You might can maintain for a period of time working and taking care of your responsibility, but trust me, sooner or later you will abandon all responsibilities for that thing that you call your substance use disorder.
And I'd like to pause just a little bit and elaborate a little bit more on this by keeping the focus on myself. At one time, I wasn't honest about my addiction. I thought that I didn't have a problem. And so I like to just focus on that because I don't want to rush through this, because this is very important, because a lot of times we try to do things that we feel that we can do it on our own. And like the article says, step one is that we must admit we were powerless over whatever the substance may be. And like we read earlier, there are many communities of many aspects of addiction, whether it be alcohol, drugs, etc., etc. However, until I became honest with myself and said, you know what, Craig, not only that you're a dressed up garbage can, but you have a serious problem, and that you have caused a lot of hurt and pain and suffering, not only within yourself, but within your friends and loved ones. So, I had to find out what was my higher power, because I knew I couldn't do it by myself. And so I needed help, and so I found that help through my method or methodology, not my methodology, but through a therapeutic community, which is called peer support. And so, hey, if I gave it a try, I encourage you to give it a try as well. Be honest with yourself.
Be honest.
Stop faking the phone.
It says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol or any other drugs, and that our lives have become unmanageable. That's the first step. Remember, these steps have to be done behind one another. So the first part is admitting that you actually have a problem. So if you get to that place where you might not have it all together, but you have admitted that to someone that you have this particular issue, then we salute you and we tell you that that's the starting process for you to get to the level of maintaining your sobriety.
Maintaining.
That's my favorite word.
That's right. So you're making strides.
Making strides. Congratulations if you have admitted it, that you have an issue, and when you admit that, that's step one from the 12 steps. Now step 2. It says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Step 2 represents a stage of hope for potential recovery, where the previous step may have spurred questions around being powerless to addiction. The second step aims to show them a way forward. Step 2 uses an important term, higher power. Noticeable, this is the first mention of a higher power within the steps. Later, the terms God and Him may be used interchangeable with this power concept. A higher power is anything external that inspires you to stay sober. This power usually has a large presence in an individual person. This language is intended to make this belief accessible to all secular and spiritual people. Examples of higher powers include a religious God, the universe, or karma. Some may choose medical professionals or processes of recovery itself. I'm gonna pull over, pause, and park right there, and I'm gonna interject this and put it in quotations. That always make sure whatever you use as your higher power, make sure you have some evidence that it works. So if whatever you call your higher power is your choice, but make sure you use something or pick something that you have evidence that it works. I mean, don't try it on the first go around. Say, I'm gonna try this right here. Don't do that. Find something that you have evidence that it works. I'm going to drop down and end it on the substance in step 1 allows room for external guidance to assist individuals on their road to recovery. Defining a personal higher power early makes connection with a much easier in the later steps. So finding out if you have or believe in a higher power, making that connection early, that's at step 2. Remember, this is 12 steps, but at step 2, it tells us, listen, step 1, once you admit you have a problem, step 2 jumps in, listen, try to find something greater than yourself to help you. And that's very important. That is not later on in the steps, it's right at the top of the steps. So make sure you make that connection early.
Yeah. And so, like step 2 says, it gives you hope. It gives you hope that you're not alone, you're not by yourself, and that you number one, you've been honest. Now you're seeking hope. Hope for what? For me, I chose for change. And so I choose my higher power, which is God. I use God as Jesus Christ as the Lord over my life.
Amen.
And so I accept that as my hope of salvation. So it works for me. Like Mike said, find something that works, like the boomerang theory. I'm going to say that again.
Boomerang.
Throw a boomerang out there and it doesn't come back to you, it does not work.
That's right.
But if you get into a higher power, something that is sound and that's rewarding, let me say that again, something that is sound and rewarding.
It's a good to me. I like that. I'm gonna steal that. I give you credit the first time.
All right, I'm a borrow it. Let's hold on to it for the day.
Go ahead, Miss Karen. 3.
Number 3 is faith. Make a decision to turn your will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Step 3 is identified as a stage of action. Notable phrases in this step include turn our will over, God as we understood Him. Despite the spiritual language, note that 12-step programs are open to all. They encourage anyone to use the program with their own concept of higher power. Reframing the secular language is pivotal due to this flexible application. God is a higher power an addict will seek help from, as mentioned in step 2. Since addiction cannot be controlled internally, external help is required to proceed. This is why the affected give control of their will. This is why the affected give control of their will to their higher power. Turning your will and life over is an alternate way to say one is accepting outside help when they feel overwhelmed. You may see this process labeled with spiritual terms like prayer and meditation. This is why reframing these concepts is essential to your knowledge of the 12 steps. Engaging with their higher power is just a process of conversation and reflection. They reflect internally on experiences, using these lessons to talk with external help. Turning your will over does not mean all control of life is in the hands of the external. Individuals in recovery also identify what's in their control, then make initiative to improve.
That's good stuff, man. Listen, it says, made a decision to turn our will over to the care of God as we understood Him. It says, listen, you don't have to have the same understanding as Michael for you to turn over what you need to your higher power. You can turn over your issues to your higher power and not even understand what to do after that, but you can still make the decision to turn it over. Because the long as you keep it in your hand, nothing will change. Especially if you're struggling with something at that moment. As long as it's in your hand, then nothing's actually going to change. Despite the spiritual language the 12-step programs had, they encourage anyone to use the program with their own concept of the higher power. My higher power, I call Jesus Christ. That might not be your higher power. So you have to make that determination on your own. It's not for me to force you to pick mine. You have to make that. When you make that decision, you turn it over to that higher power who you have called in your own life.
Mm-hmm. And so, with that said, I like to look at it as doing a self-evaluation.
Self-evaluation.
Internalize the things. Internalize the things of the things that you have done, the things or how the things that you have done made you feel, and so all the hurt, harm that we have caused in our lives. So we like to reflect on that and say, how can I turn that around? How can I be more productive? How can I be more of a blessing or a healing process toward not only myself but to others as well? So do a self-evaluation. I suggest. I have to do it for myself constantly. It's not just one day and put it down. Every day, through my faith, I have to do a self-evaluation. Am I being the person who I say that I want to be? And so that's my word for that.
And it says this is engaging with their higher power. Engaging with your higher power is just a process of, big word, conversation. Big word right there. It says engaging with your higher power is just a process of conversation and reflection. You have the conversation with your higher power before you get up and do whatever you need to do. Have a reflection. Why are you making this reflection? Because once you have the conversation, now you need to reflect on how to carry out what was discussed during the conversation.
You know what I learned about these steps? I'm learning as we read it. They have a correlation.
Nice.
Step 4 says courage. Make a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. We just talked about doing an inventory or self-assessment, right?
Yes.
Step 4 could be viewed as a stage of honesty. Correlation, there we go. Key terms of focus on here are fearless, moral inventory of ourselves. By taking notes on the effects of one's addictive behaviors, they can identify what must change. This may be painful, but it helps them to process their impact. Fearless indexing of one's impact on others and themselves can guide better decisions. All that one may think, say, or do should be noted and processed. As this moral inventory grows, those in recovery can find areas of both weakness and strength. Both are important when one is choosing actions that are morally correct. Meditation and acceptance in step 3 is an important practice for this reflection. The affected individual learns to accept weaknesses and amplify strengths. Ultimately, this inventory process makes recovery much more attainable. It also sets the stage for a successful life over the long term. Make a certain and fearless moral inventory of ourselves.
Wow, this is good. He started off and he says we have to make a certain and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And when he first read the paragraph, I was still reading that back and forth. By taking notes on the effects of one's addictive behaviors, they can identify what must change. They are a term or things I always tell people. Some things you don't actually have to change, you just need to adjust. But then you have those things that must change. Like this is not even optional. You can't hang around people who are smoking crack and heroin and think, well, I'm going to stay sober but still hang around those. No, this is one area that must change. Now, you can modify some areas in your life when you're struggling with a substance use disorder, but some areas, they must change. This is not even optional. These things are not something that you can just be casual about. these things must change. And when you make a searching and fearless moral inventory of yourself, point out or locate the things that you know you can put a check like, I know this must change, this must change. I don't know about that. But the ones you know that must change, check them off, get them off the plate automatically, or remove them from your list of options, and then see where it will go. Remember, you making the search and moral inventory of yourself, whereas though you don't need someone else to judge you, because honestly, no one knows you better than you. So you need to do that.
And I know for me, myself, I had a list of things that I needed to change. but for the main focus point that I felt that I needed to concentrate on was the drug and alcohol. But besides that, like the article said, and like Mike reiterated, take a note, write down notes, write a journal, because there's going to be many behaviors that we may feel that we don't need to change. And later on, come to find out, we do need to change. So writing these things down, and don't let it just be self-centered.
That's right.
Now, just don't keep the focus on yourself all the time. Think of others as well, because we all have family members or loved ones that we want to assist in the process.
That's right. Making a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Take the log out of your eye and look at yourself. But again, we just went over one of the different pathways to recovery. We did 4 of these steps, and each week we're going to do 4. So we did verses. We did steps 1 through 4. And next week, next Thursday, we'll do 4 through 8, and then so on until we complete this particular 12 steps, and then we'll go to another pathway of recovery. So the first pathways of recovery, we were dealing with 12 steps. We did the first 4, which was we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our lives had become unmanageable. Somebody else can go.
And number 2, hope. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
And number 3, faith. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him.
And 4, courage. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So with that, again, we want to thank you. Look out for our Spotlight Recovery for the month of June, which will be out 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And tune in tomorrow when we do our walk. Starting here, we'll be leaving from Capital Recovery Center at 72 North Pearl Street. Come join us.
And so, as always, we would like to lead with a positive affirmation. And so, as we were sitting here, I was thinking the word growth. 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 I chose that word because someone once told me, said, if a thing or someone is not growing, then they must be decayed. And so, I want to leave you with that word, growth. Don't be afraid of change. Always think about growth.
I'm going to leave you with target. And the reason why I say the word target because I spoke about locating or doing the inventory on the things that must change. Target your area on the things that you know that you must change, and don't worry about the things that you are on the fence about. Go target the areas of the things you know you must change. They are not optional. I have to change this. So target those areas and see where it leads you.
And mine is hope. I am a big believer in hope because I know recovery process is just tough, and when all things, are worse, hope is what keeps us going.
All right.
With that, we see you guys. Thanks for tuning in. We see you Tuesday at 10 a.m. unless we see you tomorrow at the walk.
Let's get it in.
All right.